Hello, thank you for joining us for another session of Dino Talk. I'm Bobby Dino, glad to have you back. Today we're going to be talking about bad MFs, or bad motherfuckers. I'll try and keep the swearing to a minimum for those with a little bit more virgin ears. Okay, a lot of people have asked me about this. How were different dudes in the joint that were like the really scary guys, or who was the toughest or the meanest, right? Well, it's not as easy as it sounds. I mean, sure, there were all types of baddies in there, but it's not like just because you were in the joint that automatically made you like some kind of tough guy. As a matter of fact, a lot of dudes weren't, especially with the white guys. Like if a riot would kick off or something, a lot of those guys would go hide under their bed or behind their lockers or in their cells. Just because you were there didn't mean that you were down for the cause or down for your shit, okay? Now, one thing that a lot of the hard ones, the real ones, that's what we'll call them, one thing that they had in common was these guys were generally pretty quiet and mellow. They weren't the tough guys all trying to posture and bully other people or get in the mix or, hey, brother, what do you got to do? Those generally weren't the real ones, okay? The real ones, they weren't barking dogs. They weren't the guys trying to make everybody notice them. They were usually quiet, mellow, and just kind of, they may have had buddies, but they just more or less stuck to themselves. They weren't out there trying to get noticed, okay? And they came from all races. Now, I will say this, and a lot of you may get pissed off about this, but it is what it is, okay? Out of all the races, when the riots would kick off, it seems like the Mexicans were down, the blacks were down, but a lot of the white guys would just disappear. You'd be out there in a riot, there'd be 10 white guys and like 40 fucking black dudes, and you'd be looking around going, where'd everybody go? It's because they're hiding, okay? Now, they'd get dealt with later, but I think what that was is the Mexicans and the blacks, a lot of those dudes were gang affiliated, and on the streets, they grew up in the gang kind of mentality, right? So they knew what it was to have each other's back and to be a unit, to where a lot of the white guys that were in there didn't go through that. So that whole idea to them was kind of foreign, and they didn't play it out. So they came from all races, the real ones, the baddies, right? But generally speaking, a lot of the whites were scared. I'm not saying all of them, because I wasn't, and I knew quite a few others that weren't, but a lot of them were, okay? Now, I will say this about the gang members. A lot of them, because they didn't have the guns, they didn't have, real weapons. If you get them one-on-one, they were straight bitches. They were pussies, okay? Because they're so used to being strapped or to having someone else or a bunch of dudes behind them that if you catch them one-on-one slipping like in the bathroom or in the whichever and you had a problem with them, a lot of those dudes would rank out. Just, no disrespect, bro. No disrespect, homie, So it's kind of a different mentality when you take away the firearms, you take away the knives. Not to say that people didn't have shanks, they did, but for the most part, people went around unarmed. And when you take away arms from people, you see their true character and their true bravery come out real easy, okay? Now, one of the things that saved me big time with all these riots, because I was in more riots than I can count, more riots than I can remember. Okay, a lot of them were with the Mexicans, some were with the blacks, but it was more than I even care to remember, okay? And one of the things that saved me in these riots is that most people can't fight. It's true. They either do the thing where they start windmilling and put their head down, or they just swing for the fences. They're just throwing haymakers, right? But actually like putting them up and like get, kind of shaping the fight out in their mind and going toe to toe. A lot of those dudes can't do that. And a lot of them didn't. So that saved me in the sense that I'm a bigger guy. And when you're a bigger guy, you don't get a one-on-one ever. What they do is they'll say, you, and you, go get Bobby. So that saved me in a sense that when these dudes would try and come get me, they weren't very skilled. Now, that's not to say that everybody was like that, because there were a few dudes I knew from all races, Mexicans, blacks, others, and they had hands. Those dudes, if they wanted to put them up, you were in for a treat. But most people, just in general, they can't fight. They can't. They don't even know how to throw a decent punch. So if you want to be ahead of 98% or 99% of the population, learn how to throw a few punches. Practice. You'd be surprised. Okay? Now, another thing too, I've got some size on me. I'm 6'4", I weigh 240. I was even bigger back then as far as more muscular than I am now. But just because someone was big didn't mean they were bad and didn't mean they knew how to fight. Okay? As a matter of fact, a lot of the big dudes had been able to use size their whole life to deter fights out on the streets. So when someone, even a little guy, even someone that's like 5'6", 5'7", when they get up on them and just get in their face like ready to go, these dudes wouldn't know how to handle it because they'd never had someone that was brave enough to step up to them and go toe to toe. So just because someone's got size on them, and this isn't just a prison thing, this is a street thing too. Remember, just because someone's big doesn't mean they know how to fight. If anything, they may not. They're more likely not to. Now, that's not to say that if they get a hold of you, they can't do something to you. They might be able to throw you or bash you off of something. But it wasn't a guarantee that because a dude had size or muscles that he was somehow badass or whatever. It wasn't. Okay? And going along those same lines, lifers, okay? Lifers is someone that's doing a life sentence, okay? Now, everyone would think, ooh, he's a lifer. That means that he's crazy and he doesn't care No, check it out. Most of the lifers were big fat pussies, okay? They didn't want to get in any more trouble. They wanted to get a date, meaning a parole date. The only way they're going to do that is if they go to the parole board with no infractions on their jacket or in their file. So a lot of these dudes didn't want none. And even if they'd flex up for a second, you just tell them, shut the fuck up, man. What are you going to do? Nothing, man. I don't want to do nothing. Okay? Now, keep in mind, I'm telling you this, and I'm not saying all, okay? I'm saying most, because I knew and saw some lifers do some real crazy, evil shit, okay? Crimes against humanity, all right? I'm not saying all, I'm saying most. That's just kind of how it was, okay? Now, the scariest dudes that I ever met, they weren't my size. Straight up. The scariest, most psycho, down for their shit, crazy motherfuckers that I ever met, these dudes were like, if they were 5'7", okay? But mainly like shorter, 5'5", 5'6". I mean, don't get me wrong, a lot of people in there worked out and they had some size on them, but these weren't big guys. These weren't big, towering, muscular dudes. These were little guys that were down for it. They were down to do whatever. And if anything, if you got at them foul or whatever, if they wouldn't get you right then, they'd figure out a way to get you later. Okay? So when we're talking about really scary dudes, I tell people all the time, one of the hardest dudes I ever met, I actually wrote a story about him, and in the story, his name's Old Man Tommy, but he was in his 60s and was about 5'5", okay? And that dude was scary. That dude was like, he'd get this twitch in his eye, like that's how you knew he was mean. And like me being a young kid, sometimes I'd kind of fuck with him on purpose, like, hey, Bob, or hey, Tommy, And when I saw the eye starting to twitch, I knew like, okay, time to back off. He's going to get a little too mad, right? And the only reason why I did that is because I had developed a friendship with the dude. But otherwise, I wouldn't have even want to mess with him because that guy was a documented killer on the streets and in the joint, okay? Multiple killings. He was never getting out. And like I said, if he was 5'5", I'm giving him love. So a lot of these guys, they weren't huge. They were smaller guys. And every guy that thinks, oh, just because you're big, this and that, whatever. Nah, man. The craziest guys I ever met, they were short. They were much shorter than 6 feet. Okay. Now, the real ones, okay, the baddies, right? These dudes weren't talkers. These dudes weren't barking dogs. If there was a problem, they wouldn't sit there and go, oh, you got a problem? No. Well, you got a problem? Oh, well, what do you want to do? Oh, what do you want to do? Oh, well, fuck you. Oh, well, fuck you too. That's not how they got down. Okay? There was a time for talking, and then as soon as any type of disrespect or any type of line was crossed, or they just knew like this was going to go bad, talking was done. Okay? These dudes weren't talkers. They handled business. And if you got a warning that they were going to take flight on you and beat the shit out of you, or worse, you were lucky, okay? Because these guys weren't about to talk, right? And speaking of talking, real ones didn't talk to cops, okay? So you'll see like these dudes, I saw them in there, you'll see it in the movies sometimes, maybe the cop will be like, hey, inmate, hey, you know, or, oh, I've got a problem, or, oh, if you handle this guy or whatever. Real ones, real convicts, they didn't talk to the cops. They didn't want nothing to do with the cops. As a matter of fact, if they had to, like if the cop, let's say, called them down to the podium or called them down to their office or whatever, they try and take a witness with them. The reason being was they didn't want to be accused of snitching. They didn't want the cops to say, oh, he came down here and said this or did this when he didn't. So they try and take another dude down with him. Hey, Bobby, will you come down here with me real quick so, you know, you could see what's going on? Yeah, sure, man. So real convicts, real hard dudes, they weren't trying to be the cop's friend or trying to hear what the cop had to say. They fucking hated the cops. That's what's up, okay? Now, like I said earlier, they kept a low profile. These weren't the guys that were going around trying to be comedians, trying to get everybody's attention. Oh, look at me, or oh, I'm going to do this or that. They weren't trying to get people's attention. They weren't trying to be seen or be part of the show. They were trying to keep a low profile, okay, and just blend in because they didn't want more trouble, you know? And in riots, they would get Ratpacked, as I was mentioned earlier, because people knew who they were, okay? People knew like, oh shit, that dude knows what's up. Okay, you got to go after him, and then we'll handle this guy or whatever, because they knew that a real one could just mow right through a line like nothing. Keep in mind, even though we may have had locks and socks and mop ringers and shanks and all that, it was still hand-to-hand combat, more or less. And somebody that has hands, somebody that knows what they're doing, they'll go right through something like that. And speaking of which, we're talking about keeping a low profile and all that. The real ones, the real G's, okay? They had manners. They were respectful. They were polite. They weren't trying to push up on people or be rude to someone or think that their reputation was going to carry them through something, okay? They knew what the consequences could be. So these dudes were always like, oh, if they accidentally bumped into you, excuse me. You know, if they wanted to talk while you were talking to someone, excuse me, Bobby, I don't mean to interrupt. Hey, guy, blah, 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 blah. It was always a thing of politeness, manners, and respectfulness. There was never any disrespect, because disrespect could mean bad consequences. So these dudes weren't counting on them knowing, like, or other people knowing, hey, this guy's a badass, we got to watch out for him. Didn't work like that. Not with the real ones, okay? And the real ones, you know, we're talking about like how they're crazy or this and that, but generally, these dudes like to have a good time. I was friends with quite a few, you know, we'd laugh, we'd make spreads, we'd hang out, you know, tell jokes, tell stories. It wasn't like just trying to be hard all the time and, hey, brother, what's going on, brother? You know, and you always got that look like you're angry. No, man, we're trying to kick back and have a good time because we're in a shitty situation and we're trying to make the best of it. So the people that are trying to play a part, or they're always looking pissed, or they're always looking angry, those people are usually barking dogs. Now, I will say this. Some dudes were straight psycho. And I mean psycho. Like, they weren't trying to get along with anyone. They had that look, like just that, you know, look all the time. And these dudes did some crazy shit. I mean, some crazy, evil, wicked shit. But the real psychos, the real ones like that, they were kind of far and few in between. It wasn't most, okay? And besides that, I mean, this is just my own opinion, but from what I saw while I was in the joint, being a psycho or a sociopath isn't so much an A or a B. It's more like a spectrum. It's more like, how much are they psycho? Are they really psycho, or are they a little psycho? You know? Now, psychiatrists may not agree with that, and I'm just going off of what my experience is. But it was more a sliding scale than it was a yes or no. They existed. But the point being throughout this whole talk is that people that are really down for their shit and people that are really capable and can handle their business, they aren't going to be the ones that are woofing it up and trying to get attention and plexing and going, hey, well, if you do this, I'm going to fuck you up. And blah, 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 blah. Those are barking dogs. The ones you got to watch out for are the ones that are having a good time, right? And the ones that don't do a lot of talking. The ones that are very respectful. The ones that do keep a low profile. Those are the guys, inside and out, that are going to handle their business. Hey, thank you for joining this episode. I'm Bobby Dino, and until next time, stay safe out there.